Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the deep, deep South. But you know, I came back to Mississippi. A lot of people that got out of Mississippi didn't come back, but I came back to Mississippi because of the great legacy of African-American men, that I wanted to continue the struggle that they had fought so hard and so diligently, and in many ways I felt like they were losing. So I was called back to Mississippi. But you know, some of us believe that the air in Mississippi is just a little bit cleaner and the grass is just a little bit greener. You know, Jackson, Mississippi is ideally located. It's like the garden in many ways, the Garden of Eden in many ways. It's 200 miles located, centrally located from every major city in the South. We're 200 miles from Memphis, Tennessee, 200 miles from Mobile, 200 miles from Birmingham, 200 miles from Shreveport. We should be the interstate commerce capital of the world, where 55 and I-20 intersect right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Other cities across this country have to build boats and pump water into waterways in their city, like Oklahoma City, because there's no natural water that runs through Oklahoma City. But in Jackson, Mississippi, we have the mighty Pearl River that flows through our boundaries every day. We should be a blessed people in a blessed state, but it's not the case. Jackson, Mississippi has an African-American population that's greater than 40%. At one time in Mississippi, there were more blacks, more African-Americans in Mississippi than Europeans. And yet we have the most disturbing history of any state in the nation. And things continue to get worse in Mississippi rather than get better. 42% of our population in Jackson, Mississippi lives below the poverty line, in a city where 85% of our population is African American. And yet blacks just can't seem to get a toehold. We're kicked in the face and put down and put back on every turn, not only by Europeans, but now by African Americans that we elected to put in these positions that our ancestors gave their lives for, so that we'd have an opportunity to serve as mayor and as county governments and representatives and school board members and airport authority board members. And yet we find ourselves slipping backwards every year. It's difficult times in Mississippi. Now, we're being seen on Facebook, on YouTube, on Roku TV, on WeBelieveDigital.com. That's right. Roku TV, our app sits right next to Showtime and Netflix. We're right there with the largest, the big boys all in the country. And one day, we're going to have the revenue to prove it. But today, we are struggling, and we need your support and need your help. Go to our website and hit the donate button. Subscribe. Advertise with us. Let's build back pride. Let's once again show that the South can rise again. but this time with a new leadership, not on the backs of slaves, but on the brains of African Americans. We can do this. Now, in the studio tonight, I have some guests that I'm very proud to be associated with. You know, brothers that are continuing to fight, picked up the baton, won't let go, never give up, won't quit. These brothers bring inspiration to all of our youth and all of the generations underneath us that, yes, it's possible. Brother Edwin Mitchell is in the studio with us tonight. He's a brother that's going to tell us about a significant movement and an opportunity to empower the black community and deal with all of the issues of health disparity and economic disparities. And I look forward to talking to Brother Mitchell. Brother Mitchell, I want you to say hello to our world audience. Everybody's looking at us from 25 states and 139 different countries.
That's very exciting, and I'm very pleased to be here. And I'd say good evening and good morning and good night to those in those areas, but we're proud to be here in this moment.
Well, it's good to have you in the studio, and we're going to come back to you and let you share with our audience exactly what it is you're working on. But as always, I have my co-pilot, and sometimes the pilot, Dr. Eldridge Henderson, a renowned orator, a man that is sought after all over this country. If you need a guest speaker, if you need someone that can speak truth to power, if you need someone who not only has the book learning but the street sense, who's lived many of the things that he's going to share with us tonight. Dr. Henderson, it's always good to have you in the studio. How have you been?
I've been doing fine, sir, and thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity, and I want you to continue to do well.
Thank you so much. Let's get right into it. Why are you in the studio tonight, and what is it that you're embarking upon? And the brother out there in Detroit, Michigan, call us at 800-492-5186, 800-492-5186. Eldridge, tell us why you're in the studio tonight and what you got going.
Well, while we're in the studio this evening, we're embarking on building the roads and highways to the 21st century. And that is on the backbone of high speed, or what we call broadband, internet. I'm from Vicksburg, Mississippi. And as a young boy, I used to sit back and look at the Mississippi River Bridge and watch all the barges and all that traffic pass up, under it. And I wondered how much in that tonnage, how much money were they making? Well, today, we don't have to look at those boats. There's a thin piece of fiber, smaller than a hair, that crosses over the Mississippi River Bridge, running from Dallas to Atlanta, that carries trillions of dollars of transactions, business transactions, I might say, in the dollars, trillions. And we want to be part of that economic wave that's coming to our nation, because we have to be prepared and prepare for the transformation of our communities and this state in order to actually participate in this new age economy of the internet. You used to do trade in store, but now you go to the website, make a couple of clicks, go to your cart, your product is on the way, all via by the World Wide Web. In order to do that now, you need high-speed internet for education, healthcare, logistics and transportation, and the whole gamut, even to include government. If you go to most places now, you can't even walk in for a resume or a job application. They tell you to go to www and click on their web page in order to make application for a job. There's a deficit in our community, and what the Arch Group, that's my 501c nonprofit, what we are preparing is a economic summit based around broadband and the opportunities that are on the horizon for our people and how we can actually participate, digest this information that we're putting out, and trigger the entrepreneurial spirit that runs deep in our veins as a people. We've always made a whole lot of a little of nothing. And we've always been the most productive people that you can find anywhere in the world. So we want to open up this tool case and provide the correct tools so we can actually participate in this new age economy. Our most competitive people now are in China. Most of all of the design, engineering, and manufacturing is overseas. Well, if we bring broadband online the way we should, and the way we should participate in it, our engineering students who are graduating from these universities who have to actually go out and ask for jobs, they'll have their own ability to produce their own goods and products via high-speed internet. So we got to be the change agent, and we've taken on this mantle in order to do that.
Dr. Hold it right there. Eldridge Henderson, what is this brother talking about? I know you old school. I don't know if you even have internet in your house. The old school brother like you know what he's talking about?
Exactly. I know exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about independence, economic power, black people making money, black people having access to decision making. He is talking about production, distribution, and exchange of goods and services for individual blacks, for black families, and black so-called community. You know, black people do not have communities in America, but if they do what Mr. Mitchell is talking about, build businesses, organize themselves so they can learn to be competitive, put together memorandums of understanding with others, including the enemies, and plan with 5, 10, 15, and 30-year plans, things can change in Vicksburg, in Mississippi, in the South, and the nation, economically, politically, socially. And then black people in America will leave that status that they have, which is considered an outcast and a member of a permanent underclass, and rise back to power where they can be given some respect, because we have lost it all in the last 15 years, and we're losing more every day.
So, Doc, you're from the Mississippi Delta. Sugar Ditch was affectionately named for the conditions in the Mississippi Delta. And not only certainly didn't have any internet or any broadband, didn't have any hospitals and schools and anything of that nature. How will it impact that area? Or will that area be served by this?
Well, it all depends on Mr. Mitchell and his group. Those areas have been historically excluded on purpose, so there will not be any significant economic changes. They want the people in those areas to be educationally misinformed, socially misinformed, just as they had the slavery deal in the 1860s when the slavery was over. They didn't even know about it for a couple of years. That's why they want to keep the folks up in the Delta, it's in Sugar Ditch area, where I was in that area. But I was very fortunate. I left that Delta when I was a small baby, and they put us in another hell called Hinds County, Mississippi, on a plantation, and I lived there for 17 years on a plantation, and thought I enjoyed every minute until I got off the darn thing and found out I was living in hell on earth.
So let me be clear. You actually lived on a plantation in your lifetime.
17 years, for 17 years.
17 years on a plantation.
That's right.
What was that like?
Well, it was good, I thought. Let me tell you what was so good about it for a young boy. Every time my father needed some money, he could go down to the store and get $50 or $25 or $30. Anytime we needed a ham, if we ate our ham that we raised and produced, he can go to the warehouse and get another ham. We needed clothing, shoes. You get one pair of shoes, one shirt, and a pair of pants when school started. We always had that. And I thought that was a good life. And the last thing, we always had jobs. We never worried about a job. We worked at least 10, 15, and 16 hours a day, starting when I was 5 years of age.
Elder, his statements kind of trouble me a little bit, so let me turn to you. You know, in 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation declared that the slaves were free, and many didn't leave the plantation. And so that mentality of not taking advantage of your freedom or not taking advantage of an opportunity in front of you, is there something in us that we don't get, that we need to leave and take advantage of these opportunities? Why would black people remain on the plantation?
Well, I personally believe that they thought they had security. There's no security. The way we should be looking at things today is that there's all type of opportunity if you step out. And what I mean by step out, you got to be courageous enough to make falls and make mistakes, but they're actually your own. You can't blame anybody else for those.
Hold your point right there, elders. Let's take this call. Caller, you're on the air.
I got a question for Dr. Henderson. I was just curious on what type of doctor is he?
Dr. Henderson? Hold on 1 second. He's getting his headset on.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
I was just curious. I mean, hear you on different podcasts, and they introduce you as Dr. Henderson. I was just curious of what kind of doctor are you?
I have a degree in education administration and policy studies with a minor in sociology.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
The caller may be inferring that someone who started out on a plantation is going to be difficult to end up with a doctor's degree. You was that a difficult road? Or?
Well, yeah, very difficult. But I didn't never think it would happen because I was not encouraged in high school or when I went to college to be serious about education. And I didn't learn the significance of competition, and I told you this before, until I got in the military. And I found young people in the military doing all kinds of things from different so-called groups. Native Americans, Hispanics, Asians, all kinds of things. I noticed they were in the library at the military education base. Many of them were taking courses while they was in the military at the University of Delaware and other places. Many of those young guys and girls were sitting up in the military-based education centers learning how to type and learning foreign languages, by the way. And I started doing some of that. I said, well, I didn't have any money anyway. I was a private. So I had to cut down on my economic spending. They raised cigarettes from 17 cents a pack to 19 cents a pack, and that made me stop smoking. I couldn't afford it. So I would stay in the base and take a few courses in this and that. And I messed around and went to Vietnam. They didn't kill me there, and I said, doggone it, I have an opportunity to do some things that I never thought I could do. That's why I'm here today, because of opportunity, not doing like my peers that would get paid in the military, go to the nearest town, get drugs, alcohol, and the local females and have fun. I wanted to do that, but I was afraid to do it. My daddy told me about the consequences if we do that. He said, son, send some money home to your mama, get you some bonds, and come back and do better, because you can't come back to this house. Now, that's the fact.
Wow, we're getting ready to go to break in about a minute. But again, we're broadcasting live right here in Jackson, Mississippi from an African-American-owned broadcasting studio with all of the capacity to deliver the message that African-Americans need to hear throughout this country. Now, tonight we're specifically dealing with the issue of broadband and an opportunity that it presents for African Americans. Now, the Industrial Revolution allowed for blacks to get jobs when they fled from the South to the North and to the West looking for jobs. But there has been no revolution that allowed African Americans to build wealth, to build businesses. That has not occurred. And back in the period of Reconstruction, after the Civil War, when blacks began to build wealth, and create economic engines and created Black Wall Street over in North Carolina. White folk burned it down, killed over 300 people in one day, destroying the economic opportunities and economic gains that many had fought so hard for. So as we go to this break, I want you to think about this. Is this opportunity going to level the playing field for the African American community? We're going to break and we'll be right back. Stay.
SGECOVIDsolutions.com is paving the way forward for a safer city government, delivering cutting-edge biosecurity and biosafety protocols developed internationally by top virologists and scientists using an all-natural cleaning solution, killing COVID-19 on contact like no other product on the international market. For more information, please call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at SGECOVIDsolutions.com. Let SGECOVIDsolutions.com provide innovative rapid facilities testing and world-class state-of-the-art biorisk safety protocols for all of your coronavirus needs. Call 1-800-281-9080 or visit us online at sgecovidsolutions.com.
Do you have something to say? Do you want your voice heard? Join the We Believe Global lineup. Be the star of your own show. For more info, call 800-492-5186, option number 1, or visit online at webelieve.global.
We're back live. We're broadcasting live from Jackson, Mississippi, in an African-American owned broadcasting studio. We've been seen all over the world. When we run our analytics, we have more than 25 states that are regularly tuning in and viewing the content that we produce right here in this broadcasting studio. We're broadcasting live in over 139 countries, and we're getting viewerships from at least 10 different countries on a regular basis. So what's strange to me to know that we get as many hits from New York City as we get from anywhere else in the country. I thought maybe we would have been getting more viewers out of the Washington, D.C. area because the government likes to keep up with what we're doing. But in this case, we're getting viewers in all across the country. Now, tonight's subject is critically important because it could change the dynamics in the African American community. We could build the Black Wall Street, a universal Wall Street where no one can tear it down or burn it up or riot and kill off the owners. And my guest, Dr. Mitchell, is here in the studio, and he's going to share with us how African Americans can be a part of this and what it could mean. Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Brother Socrates. As part of this building the future highways of economics in this country, is to bring about broadband for everyone, or high-speed internet. Well, what we're actually saying is actually having fiber to the home, which will allow at least 1 gig up and 1 gig down in terms of speed. Once again, it'll cross all the gamuts: education, healthcare, business, government, just a myriad of everything is all tied to the internet. Well, our participation in this is the ability to actually read these documents that are actually coming down in forms of grants and other opportunities for the small to medium-sized business to actually participate in the grant process. We're here in the state of Mississippi. Over the next 10 years, we're looking at federal funds coming down at least $1 billion plus over the next 10 years. So potentially almost $2 billion over 10 years. That's nothing to sneeze at. And so in preparation for this, the Arts Group is preparing job training for those who have the acumen to go into that area, splicing fiber, maintaining cloud services, customer service relationships, and the technicians that will be out in the field to operate and maintain the backbone of this new system that needs to go in across the state and actually across the U.S. A lot of people are talking about 5G. I don't want to go off too much more into that, but 5G is already obsolete. Our competitors in China are already operating 6G. So we're already behind. So in order to play catch up, we've got to bring a lot of resources to bear, and that's the reason the government is doing this. So within that means, it's just like the economic times when the federal government decided to create the electrical associations to bring electricity to every home. Well, broadband is needed just like water, gas, or electricity in the home in order for you to participate and communicate with the rest of the world. I emphasize communicate, because if you get cut off from it, you can't participate. So on the 7th and the 8th of July, in the great city of Vicksburg, Mississippi, at one time known as a key to the South, and we're hoping to be the key to the South again, through this opportunity, we're going to have an economic summit based around broadband. Being able to bring jobs, opportunities, and those who have the entrepreneurial itch to bring their resources to bear and their talent to bear to participate in this billion-dollar flow of funds that are coming down from the federal government. Also, we will have there people from the Pew Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, and a myriad of other foundations, as well as the Atlantic Federal Reserve. We'll have 2 representatives there from the Community Reinvestment Act. And that act, allows minorities and other minorities and those who are economically disadvantaged the opportunity to gain these funds, so you can stack these different layers of economic opportunity and turn it into a business.
Hold your point right there, Doc. He said $2 billion, $2 billion, Dr. Henderson, is coming down to the state of Mississippi. Traditionally, when these funds come down, they come down to our governor and our legislature. And they don't get to the minority community. What's going to be different about it this time, Dr. Henderson?
You want to hear the truth, or you want me to make people feel good?
No, I mean, you are a free Negro. You just explained to me that you have the ability to say what's true and not worry about losing your job or your wife, so you can speak truth to power.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you, you won't see any major significant changes. What they normally do in situations like this, local, state, and federal entities find a few trusted black people or other minorities and put them in the lead and tell them about all the money that's available for their communities, give them just enough to fail without the decision-making responsibility to make changes in the budget as necessary without their approval. I've worked on grants like this for 30 years. And in the end, you find that they did the same. They do the same thing they did when you talk about the electrical applications in the black community, when they didn't have telephones and electrical units, lights. Where I was living at the time, the white man that owned the plantation said, we're not going to have any telephones here for black folks. He had one at his store. So we're not going to have any lights. So we had a fireplace and a lamp. And he told us something, and I found this out later. I wonder why we didn't have an outhouse. He told my daddy, you're not going to have an outhouse. The field is too close, and we ain't going to be taking up that space. So for 17 years, we didn't even have an outhouse, and I didn't know the significance of it. It wasn't a problem. When I found out the history as to why we didn't have these things, I was amazed. So as you see, I am still alive. My father is still alive, and some of the same people that had us locked in because we were there, because we didn't have the ability to get out, we thought, their sons and daughters are running the same businesses that they ran during that period of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And they start phasing out in the mid-70s, 80s, and 90s, and now their sons and daughters and nephews in their 30s to 60s running things. They still have the same plantation, but they do pay a minimum wage now. But basically, you don't see any significant changes. And the last thing, they talk about these superhighways that used to go through America in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s. They bypassed all the black communities, cut them up, and said, we'll make it good for black folks. And we don't even have time to talk about how similar it is with broadband. They had all them wonderful highways going through the black communities. Then the businesses left, and those cousins of yours that left Mississippi and went to Chicago and Philadelphia and the West that you talked about, all of a sudden didn't have jobs no longer 25 or 30 years. They couldn't get to the suburbs because they did not allow public transportation to go out there, and they had them locked out. Same thing going to happen with broadband unless the black people that's in charge get the ability to make corrections in the budget and demand that we're going to do service for the underserved and the non-served and not hit the outside extremities of those communities.
Seems like he has indicted black leadership that accepts a few of us who accept the opportunity to the disadvantage of the masses, and that black folks have not ever participated in an economic bonanza or opportunity. How is it going to be different this time? You heard him.
I've lived it, and I've also seen it. But through my lifetime, I started out as a Army Corps of Engineer officer, facility engineer. I learned how to build things. And through their wisdom, when I went on active duty, I got branch transferred over to infantry. I learned how to blow things up and tear things up and force the people to surrender. Well, I still got that fighting spirit. And I'm not going to let that go on this issue. Now, we got some secret sauce that we can't just share right now, but we actually want the people in the community to come and participate, and we'll let them in on this activity because the groundswell has to come from, as a good doctor says, from our communities. But we've been split up and divided. We have gatekeepers, those who want to butt heads, those who will say it'll never happen. We've heard it all. I've taken the slings and arrows. I've taken the hits to the back of the head, but I'm still here. And we're going to fight and push this issue for those who are underserved and not served by making the broadband affordable. Not trying to go head to head with the big entities or those big guys. I'm not going to mention the competition. You already know who they are. But they don't want to serve us. They don't want to serve the small people, the ones and twosies up and down 61 Highway North and South. The people up in the heart of the Delta who have worked so hard to build this country, and they stood on their shoulders by their sweat and their equity. There's time for, I said before, for a sea change. And for those children to participate, we've got to create these opportunities and stand on what we say and what we say we mean. We're part of this political process also. Now, we're not going to buck the political process. We're going to do our best to work with it, but make it work for us in a sense where we can create our own opportunity out of the slices that are there and build a base where you can uplift your community. Give it dignity again. Not all these small pace and small jobs. COVID shook this country, brought it to its knees, to a complete stop because of what they decided to do with the big corporations. Oh, we'll build fiber and we'll stretch it out. The state just received $32 million from Cindy Hyde-Smith and the other senator. What did they do? They gave it to cooperatives. What did they do? They built out fiber, middle mile. It didn't go to the end user. It didn't go to anyone's home. 32 million, supposed to serve 7,000. Well, we have a plan on the table for Vicksburg. We did our own feasibility study. We did everything by the book and the research. We look at all the opportunities. There's a thing called the Opportunity Atlas. If you're looking at demographics in the census tracts, you can find those individuals in those small pockets within our community that will best use these resources to actually lift themselves up. And those are the areas that we're going to be targeting and make sure that this broadband is affordable. Not a $300 package, but offer it in a sense where fair competition for those who want it, dice it up for those who want to have these large packages, $300 to almost $500 a month, which is ridiculous. But for those who are willing to squeeze their budget for $50 to $80 a month, make it affordable, because the large corporations said it's not feasible for us to go in there. We're not going to get a return on our investment. We're not going to see, we can't tell our stockholders that our stock will fall because we spent too much money in an area that's not going to have a greater return. We have an answer for that also. Make it affordable.
Mr. Let me ask you a question. Black folk like myself who didn't get a doctor's degree like Dr. Henderson over here struggle with understanding technology. So explain to our viewers the difference between Wi-Fi and fiber and how this industry, how this thing works.
Okay. My best way to explain it is the turtle and the hare. Currently what we have across this nation is mostly what we call cable. Cable is just like the turtle. The signal is passed over copper. And if you notice, if you look at the copper lines, electrical lines, if they have a large dip in them, as in they're waning, it's not a straight line anymore from pole to pole, but it's a large dip, that copper is worn out. So that means the infrastructure is at its peak. It's about to break. That's some of the reason all this is going on. So we have copper to the house, DSL, slow latency. Your call might drop. All these other things might happen. Now, Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a tower that might be spread all across your community, and they use radio signals which are pushed out from either tower to tower or repeated. Those signals are grabbed up by our electronic devices. You might have a good reception. You might go to what we call a reverse slope, go down the hill, and you're cut off. Not a good solution. Now, if we have fiber to the home, not Wi-Fi, not coaxial, not cable, but fiber, you are directly connected into the backbone and the heart of the internet. The pulse and the beat is there. So now you go to a greater speed. The aforementioned I mentioned, those are the turtles. The fiber is the hare. At the blink of an eye, it's faster than a blink of an eye. So that means your screen on your computer can refresh without you tapping to refresh it. The signal is constantly there. If you go to your computer now, currently, and you want to go to YouTube or Netflix, you click on it. You might have to wait a couple of seconds before it even pops up. If you have fiber, as soon as you click it, you're there. The transport takes you directly to the heart of the cloud-based system. There's no delay.
Wow. Dr. Henderson.
Yes, sir.
I needed that education. I've got a better understanding of how this thing works. Now, Doc, in the African American community throughout rural Mississippi, because we're a rural state, not much of this technology is in our communities. Even right here in Jackson, there are some places where the internet is not available. Now, how can we assure that black folks are involved not only from the end user standpoint, but from the entrepreneur, the provider standpoint? How can we make certain that our folk don't get bamboozled and left out once again? You see, in your day and time, people made their money brick by brick. From what I'm hearing and learning here, the economy is made click by click. And if we're not in the game, are we going to be relegated to number 7, as you say, in the pecking order all over again?
Not necessarily. Now, there's something different this time. It's the deliverer, Mr. Mitchell. I told you before, he's one of the smartest men I know that I met recently. He has the training, the background, and the desire, and the management skill to make these things work. And I don't know I'm well enough to say, but I don't know who his controllers are. You know, we all have them directly into it. It might be the bank, might be a group of industry leaders or whatever. But this man seemed to be sincere. He knows the problems. He knows the scope. He knows exactly what needs to happen. But the problem going to be, and it's always when it comes to training, who is going to train the people that's going to be making that $18, $19, $25, and $30 an hour to install the fiber? Who's going to train them? It's going to be a community organization, a community senior college, or an industry, or who will be doing it? That determines the success of broadband.
So you're saying that training has got to be a major part of the solution in terms of how our folk are served?
That's supposed to be done yesterday. Mr. Mitchell and his group should already have at least 1,000 young men and women of various ethnicities ready for training and have the scope already put together, looking at their possibilities of intelligence, the ability to learn. Give them a vocational inventory assessment to see if they have the skills to learn the new technology. And then you will find the people are there, they are ready, and you don't go through institutions that are designed to exclude certain people by testing them first on broadband, on technology. Put a multiple choice test on there saying what is cable, what is Wi-Fi, blank, blank, blank. When did they start it, who invented it, and all that crazy stuff. They don't know that. And they won't get the job. Mr. Mitchell's job is to follow this pattern and not what I just told you. And he has the ability, the courage, and the knowledge to do it.
Thank you, Doc. We're broadcasting live right here from Jackson, Mississippi. We're being seen in over 139 countries. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Roku TV, and our own platform, BelieveDigital.com. You know, we're getting the message out. And we're talking directly now to the African American community over the world. We're not talking to African Americans in Hinds County. This economic summit that the brother is speaking about that's going to occur in Vicksburg, Mississippi, I believe it's on July 7th and 8th,
Correct.
is something that you ought to be making your reservations from New York City to get down to Vicksburg, to learn this technology and understand the opportunities and how vital it is to the survival of your community. If we don't avail ourselves of this technology, we're going to find ourselves worse off than we've ever been, because nothing can happen these days without this internet and this fiber and this technology. Nothing works without that. You can't even get in your own garage anymore without it. And so we have to train our people, teach our people involve our people, and we can't do that unless we have a trainer. My guest tonight, Mr. Edwin Mitchell, is the leader, the expert in this area. Make your reservation to get to Vicksburg July 7th, July 8th for the Broadband Economic Summit. We're going to go to commercial, and we'll be right back.
The Mississippi Link is an African-American female-owned newspaper with a trusted voice that is highly respected throughout the city, state, and nation. Our motto, keepers of the knowledge for people who speak the truth, since 1993. Link significantly influences the thoughts, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readers. Call us at 601-368-8481 for your advertising needs. If you would like to receive a newspaper in the mail each week, our annual subscription is only $52 per year. That is only $1 per week for you to stay informed regarding many stories that you can only get in the Mississippi Link. Sign up today at themississippiLink.com and click on Home Delivery.
Welcome back to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting right here from Jackson, Mississippi. Our telephone number is 800-492-5186. We've had interesting discussions about the impact of broadband and the lack of access to broadband, specifically in the African American communities. You know, we have to be vigilant. Historically, in our communities, we don't get the opportunities to be involved in those things that create wealth. In the European and the white communities throughout the state of Mississippi, in Columbus, Mississippi, they put the Air Force Base, and now we have the Golden Triangle. In Meridian, Mississippi, we put the Stennis Center, and Meridian is one of the wealthiest cities in Mississippi. On the Mississippi Gulf Coast, we put the Ingalls Shipbuilding Yard, and wealth is being generated all over the Mississippi Gulf Coast. But in the African American community, what did we put? We put casinos. Casinos. And where you put casinos is designed to take the wealth out of the community and create a more desperate environment. That's what has happened to us in the past. We got to change the dynamics. We cannot allow broadband and the access to it and the provider of it to go in everybody else's community but ours. My guest, Mr. Edwin Mitchell, is here fighting to not let that happen, to bring this opportunity to African Americans. That's why he's in Vicksburg, Mississippi. You know, this is so serious when I think about Vicksburg, Mississippi. And I think about all of the burial grounds and the cemeteries over there that we visit every year on Memorial Day. And I think about the role and the struggle that African Americans played. And this thing is so serious, how to keep the economics out of a certain group's hands. I'll remind you that during the Civil War, over 800,000 lives were lost fighting to try to maintain slavery in the state so that the economics could stay exactly the way it was. There were more millionaires in Mississippi than anywhere else in the world. And Europeans, after harvest season was over, would all gather at the finest hotels at the King Edwards in Jackson, Mississippi, at the Peabody in Memphis, Tennessee, and celebrate a great economic harvest. We cannot allow this to continue. So my guest, Dr. Henderson, who understands, having lived this life, having been raised on a plantation for over 17 years, who is now a renowned orator that's sought after all throughout this country. He's got the Action Leadership Institute where he's training our people. And I want to get him to go over what happens at the Action Leadership Institute and how vital it is to the success of this broadband initiative, because you can't have one without the other. And so we gotta stay at this thing. Now, you remember I said that over 800,000 lives were lost to try to keep the conditions the same way that they were. Dr. Henderson has said to me in the past that over 200,000 lives that were lost were African Americans, and I cannot get to that. I cannot fathom how that could be, because I come from the old school of Marcus Garvey. And Marcus Garvey's motto was, and I live by it today, is that you got to be loyal first to your God, to your family, to your race, and then your country. And if you live by that motto and you're loyal to your race, we will not allow broadband to bypass us. We will not allow these opportunities to leave us behind as they've always done in the past. But Dr. Henderson, tell us about Action Leadership Institute and what it is you're trying to accomplish over there.
Well, we have a 3-tier program. We are very simple. We are not complicated. We believe that if you look at yourself first and eliminate your problems in education, training, and moral development, get yourself straight first, transfer those same ingredients to your family, get them trained, look at their deficiencies, and improve in those areas. And the 3rd tier is community development. Once you get yourself and your family educated and trained where they can do more than teach school and pray or preach, where they can engage in economic development, where they know about negotiation, problem solving, tactics, logistics, how to work with troublemakers but not give them control of their lives, how to build compacts and contracts with people they don't even like, how to codify what they do in contracts where if they mess up, they can take them to court and win. Spend the money up front, get the best lawyers you can, and then start working on programs. If you're broke, uneducated, and not trained, you're not going to be able to do anything significantly. If you haven't done it yourself, your children will not prosper. And I guarantee you, if you have limited liability and ability, you're not going to improve yourself. And that's why Action Leadership Institute say, take care of family first, community second, after you work on yourself, and then you'll be able to solidify yourself. You'll get your will together. You'll get your power of attorney together for your family. You'll get your life estate together. You'll learn to start a business when you're about 18 or 20. You'll learn how to buy land, houses, invest in stocks and bonds before you're 25 or 30. You'll learn how to go to bed at night and have 8 or 10 streams of income making money while you're in the bed snoring. You'll learn how to stay with your family, with your wife or your husband. You can't divorce every time there's a little problem in the family. You have to go to psychiatrists and medical doctors and others and let them work with you. Go to the local preacher if necessary. Build these families. You have to stop having too many children that you can't afford. Give you an example. My dad had 6. And I used to tease him, man, why did you all have so many children and you couldn't even feed yourself? He and my mom were together. And my mom said, that was the Lord's will. My daddy took me outside, whipped me, and said, you better not ever say that again, boy. Don't talk about that. Your mama said that's the Lord's will. And I hadn't talked about it again until I got in my 50s, and I tease him about it now. I told you he's still alive. We talk about it now.
How old is your father?
98.
98.
Still working 2 part-time jobs, driving, and doing, he says he does half of the things he used to do all his life. So he can do half of them. I don't know what that means, but that's what he said.
Well, whatever a 98-year-old man says, that's what he means.
Okay.
And you ain't got to understand it, because he ain't going to tell you but one time.
That's right.
You know, I remember my father and granddaddy said, boy, I'm going to tell you this one time. Now, that's all he was going to tell you. The next time, you were going to be getting up off the floor. And that's the way it was back then. But, Doc, you mentioned this training and this technology. It seems that our children have a better understanding of technology and can be trained to do these things than old school people like you and I.
Correct.
So how old should we start this training with our children in technology?
Well, you should start in pre-K. When they go to pre-K, you should have those little machines there, those phones, those little automatic added machines. You should have computers and technology. You should have internet that's connecting pre-K students in England, Africa, Asia. You should have those young people trained to learn English plus 2 other foreign languages before they get into first grade. And you don't need qualified people to teach it. Everybody I know that learns language used to learn most of it at home. Sometimes the parents don't even have 2 years of education, but they teach them. And then when you get those young people started in that mode, you got to have an educational institution that's going to transfer additional and more progressive ideas. But the problem is, Mr. Socrates and Mr. Mitchell, you're not going to get this in the public school system. And that's why the black people, on a denominational basis, are going to have to build their own schools and follow the money. The Supreme Court says states now, local, state, and federal entities can give tax money to religious schools. Every black denomination in America ought to start their own schools, make agreements with the local public school, and send their kids to take things that they want them to take that they don't offer, that cost too much, like football, and put those students in these church schools and train them. I talked about this last night. And get them to the point where they know I'm the best student in this class. When I get to the public school, I'm going to be best. And they do this because they've learned this in the church school. When I get in a committee, I'm going to be an officer, I'm going to be the secretary, I'm going to be the vice president. When I get on the football team, which we don't have at the church school, I'm going to be the quarterback, I'm going to be the center, I'm going to be the running back. I'm going to get more tackles than anyone else. I'm going to be the leader here. When you get on the A team, you want to be the captain. When you go and take the tests for college and universities, ACT and others, you're going to make 30, 35, 36. That's the way you've been trained from kindergarten.
Well, Doc, that's a long ways from where I see today. When I see young people in the streets of Jackson walking the streets 9, 10, 11 years old with their pants below their knees carrying Uzis and AK-47s. So they must be getting a different training from somewhere.
Well, they're not getting any training, but those are the guys that Mr. Mitchell and his boys, I would say his group, going to have to go and get off the street. Those guys are smart. A lot of those kids have not had a mother nor a father in their life. They're with their grandmothers and great-grandparents. They don't even know anything about education and training because the last 3 years they didn't go to public school to the point where they learned anything because they didn't have internet. The parents didn't know anything about it. And the end result is that we have lost a whole generation, and black people, poor whites, and Hispanics going to suffer at least 200 years because of 3 years of miseducation. And it's not our fault.
Wow, we've suffered enough. Dr. Mitchell, these young folk are in trouble. Now, I know you from Vicksburg, Mississippi. You've been there for a while and you watched things decline. Do you have a observation on what is wrong with our young people?
Yes, I do. And that is that the majority of our people have just become followers. We don't have any key leaders that we can look to. And they're sought after. A lot of times they're found in the wrong places because of the activities that these youth are into. there's no guarantee in the activities that they're participating in. There's no no security in it either. So we got to have a plan, in which we do, to provide job training in those areas with broadband. They'll get them off of the street. Now, if they have the willing and the ability, we know we can train them. That's not even questionable about it, and place them into good opportunities where they can move forward. I just made this observation with my business partner the other day. I said, it's funny how these youth want to play Call of Duty. That's where they play to be like in the military and shoot and all this other kind of stuff. But then when you ask them, would they go in the military, they say absolutely not. You want security, but you don't want responsibility. We got to turn over this leaf that our young people have to be responsible for their futures. By the same caveat, we got to give them the leadership that they need and be unquestionable about that leadership and not fall to the wayside. We let too many other people take responsibilities of those actions that we're actually responsible for. And I'm going to put in this plug before we move on, that if they would contact and go on the internet and go to thearchgroup.org and make a reservation to come to the summit, we'll have something there for them also. It's not just about key leadership, it's about community-based effort and support in what we're doing. And so we want the young people to also to participate. Not all the ones who just, they're just so good, we want them to come. We want the full gamut. And we're not placing any restrictions on who can come and who cannot come. It's free to the general public. Once again, I'll say it's free to the general public. So there's no barrier to entry. Now, I'm from the old school. My family, I can trace back every major campaign since World War I, my family has participated in. So I've validated myself for this country. It's now time for this country to in turn offer up the fruits that it all talks so positively about. Now the fruits are there, but it lies within the Constitution. It doesn't talk about individuals in the Constitution. It talks about corporations in the Constitution. Corporations and businesses generate wealth, and that's where it resides. And that is a seed that we're trying to cast on fertile ground for there to be a harvest. This is my last, as I call it, Yahoo. This is my last ditch effort, and I'm putting everything I have into it to bring it full circle, from the young to the old, from the cradle to the grave, because this is the greatest opportunity since, I would say, coming out of the Depression. Money hadn't flowed like this in who knows for the next 100 years. So we have to take advantage of what's going on. So go to thearchgroup.org, get your place, sign up for the 2 days, gain your knowledge base of what we're going to be putting out, find your opportunity within there, come and challenge us. I'm not saying come and just participate. Come and challenge us about where your place could be with this opportunity. And I promise you, we have an answer. From the banking side, from the entrepreneurial side, from the job skill side, is covered from cradle to the grave. We haven't just started working on this. We're almost going into 2 years into the possibilities of this. We read all the notices of funding opportunities, hundreds of pages of documents. If you want to hide something from us, put it in a book. We read every sentence, every line, every nuance to find out where the pitfalls are. And so we can tell you where they are, but it takes participation. Don't wait for somebody just to lay something in your lap. Go for it. Work for it. Put some effort and sweat into it. On the 7th and the 8th of July, that'll be your sweat equity to get your start in this great opportunity. The internet, as Dr. Henderson says, you can learn a foreign language, you can continue your education, you can put your product and service out there. It's going to open up other opportunities, because if you start selling your product, that means you have to increase your volume. To increase your volume, you got to have additional space, and so forth and so on. There is a chain effect in this opportunity, and it comes through communication. I've seen some things that I want to happen from the Delta to the Key to the South in Vicksburg. Vicksburg used to be a hub of logistics and transportation, food products, and general material. We have two places where we trade our stocks: New York Stock Exchange and the Chicago Mercantile. Why we can't have our own? Why can't we take our small farmers and they grow crops in abundance, and we stack those crops, we sell them wholesale, and we port them out from the port in Vicksburg? Why not? How come? I'm not talking about a dream. I'm talking about what can be done if the effort is put forth. I'm putting in my sweat equity now. I'm taking the slings and arrows now. All you have to do is stand on my shoulders to get to the next level. I have two nieces that I'm extremely proud of: chemical engineer and a PhD in biomedical engineering. Even though they have great jobs, I still look for them to have an entrepreneur spirit as their grandmother. My grandmother only had a 3rd grade education, but she bought automobiles. Didn't know how to drive, but the sons drove the cabs and made additional money. Now, you don't have to have the total education of having a PhD. You can leverage what you have and increase it 10 times over by entering this opportunity. Don't let it pass you by. Don't let it pass you by. We're talking about 2 billions, that's billions with a B. Great opportunities for those, from those who bake cakes, those who sew dresses, those who have intellectual property, those who have just creative ability that we know of. Place your product out there. But in order to do that, you got to be able to communicate with the world. In order to open that door, you have to have broadband. And when that door swings open, the opportunities are endless. You're just not selling product here. You can sell product across the board. You can sell it anywhere in the world.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. I really want to advise our stations that we had to go over a little bit this evening. The information was so critical, and the offerings are so succinct. I learned a lot this evening. It's an opportunity that African Americans have to avail themselves. My guest, Dr. Mitchell, is here, and he's begging and pleading with you to take advantage of this by coming to the Economic Summit. As always, my guest, Dr. Henderson, is just a wealth of knowledge with straightforward conversations about our conditions and where we got to go from here. Now, this has been Socrates Garrett Live, right here from Jackson, Mississippi. We want you to have a wonderful weekend and stay safe. Good night.
Do you have something to say? Do you want your voice heard? Join the We Believe Global lineup. Be the star of your own show. For more info, call 800-492-5186, option number 1, or visit